Good morning. My name is Margaret Liu, and I'm the 33rd District PTA Financial Reviewer. Welcome to Financial Review Training. We're so glad that you have joined us. We want to share a few housekeeping items about this room meeting before we get started. We're asking all participants to please mute yourself during the presentation. Please ask questions in the chat section, and we'll review them and answer the submitted question during and after the presentation. We'll be sharing video segment covering the basic portion of the PowerPoint that we share with you. After each video segment, we will answer as many of the submitted questions as possible. We'll have recorded training about budget, financial reviews, and tax filing posted on our YouTube channel. Our training team today is Donna Holland, 33rd District PTA Treasurer, Rita Rivera, 33rd District PTA Financial Secretary, Lizette Gonzalez, 33rd District PTA Director of Budget and Finance, and Lisa Umatsu, 33rd District PTA Tax and Governmental Filing Consultant. We're going to show you a pre-recorded video on how to conduct financial review and who conduct financial review. The information can be found on presentation slide 3 to 6, so you can follow along.
So we're going to start by talking about why we do financial reviews, when we do them, and who can conduct the financial reviews. So first of all, why? We want to make sure, because we are earning money for programs for our schools and our children, we want to make sure that that money is properly spent. So then we need to make sure that the financial records are accurate and reflect what we do. So what we're doing is reviewing compliance with PTA policies and procedures, and then also checking to see if we're falling short of abiding by policies and procedures. And this is not always about intentional mismanagement. It's just sort of a double check to make sure that we're doing the best that we can to be accountable with our recording, our financial recording. Also, we want to make sure that the wishes of the association, your general membership, are being followed, because the decisions for spending money are not solely dependent on one officer or even the entire board, but we need to make sure that all of our members have a say in how the money is being spent. Also, we want to make sure that we're reporting to our association to make sure that they're aware of how the money is being spent, and that they can, ask questions, give feedback, whatever. And then the proper reporting of financial activities also protects the board members. And then we want to make sure that we have the proper data in order to protect the tax-exempt status of the unit. Okay, so when do we do financial reviews? So according to the bylaws, we need to do one at mid-year. So that's going to cover the July 1st through December 31st period. And then at the end of the fiscal year, which would be from January 1st through June 30th. In addition to those two financial reviews, sometimes special things happen where we need to double check and make sure that we're reviewing our records. So if there is a check signer is removed or added, that's also a time to do a financial review. If there's a bank account that's closed, we want to make sure that there's a financial review done at that time. Also, in addition to your standard checking account, if you have other bank accounts like a savings account, or you have e-commerce accounts like for PayPal or Square, you want to make sure that you're doing a separate financial review 2 times a year for each of those accounts. So who can conduct the financial review? Check your bylaws to see whether your financial reviewer is elected and serve as a board member, or if it is appointed by the board, and in this case, the financial reviewer would not be a board member. There are people who cannot be financial reviewers. So a financial reviewer cannot be a check signer or related by blood, marriage, or cohabitation with anyone on the financial team. So there are different rules depending on whether your financial reviewer is a qualified accountant or not. And we'll get into more of the definition of a qualified accountant on the next slide. So if your financial review is not a qualified accountant, then you can have a review committee or an accounting firm. And then just as far as the timing is concerned, the June 30th financial review, the one covering January 1st through June 30th, should be done by the outgoing financial reviewer. And then a key thing is that the independence of the financial reviewer is very critical. We want to make sure that the financial reviewer can be objective and make their judgments based solely on the documentation that they receive. So as promised, we're going into what the definition of a qualified accountant is. And so a qualified accountant is someone who has been trained or licensed to conduct audits and or review accounting records. They do not have to be currently employed as an accountant, but they just have to have the training. So if your financial reviewer is a qualified accountant, then they can do the financial review and that's all that needs to be done. However, if the financial reviewer is not a qualified accountant, then you'll need to have a financial review committee. And that committee must be ratified at an association meeting. So it should be composed of the financial reviewer and at least one other member of the association. So the financial review committee, once the financial reviewer has done the work of the financial review, then the committee can go ahead and double check, go over the work. And it's really up to the committee to specify what they want to cover, what they want to look into. They could check with the board to see if there's anything in particular that the board wants the committee to look into, but it is pretty casual. So we just want to make sure that we have an extra pair of eyes just to catch anything that the original financial reviewer did not notice. Okay, so there are a couple of questions in the chat that Donna had already answered, but I think we're going to go ahead and read them out loud.
Talk through those, yeah.
Yeah.
By what date should the June 30th reviewer be completed, the financial review? And when the books close at the end of June, ideally the financial reviewer would do the review and then have it prepared for the next association meeting to be approved and adopted in that association meeting. Sometimes that doesn't happen and we get a little behind, but to stay on track, if you can have your review done before the next association meeting, you're staying on track good.
And of course, I'm going to jump in and just say, not just having the review done, but having the committee, the review committee
It's signed off, yeah.
Sign off on it, and the executive board also seeing it before the next association meeting.
Right. Okay. The next question, does the appointed elected financial reviewer must be the PTA member of the unit? And no, it doesn't. It could be a member of a different PTA unit. I don't know. Lisa, do you know if it has to be anybody in the PTA?
Well, if they're going to be elected, then they do need to be a member of the unit, right? But as far as an appointed one, I mean, you could probably, if you appoint someone that's a professional outside, then I don't think they
don't
need
have
to
to be a member.
Yeah.
All right, let's see if there's more questions here. Does trained include a bachelor's in finance or accounting versus actual certification? I believe the PTA regulation is certification. Okay, yeah. Margaret's nodding her head. Okay, does that mean by July meeting or first meeting of next school year? So really, I think this goes back to when the financial review needs to be signed, completed, done, and having it ready for that next association meeting. Whether it happens in the fall is usually the time that it is. So you really have kind of all summer to kind of get that June 1 done. So that is what I'm referring to. I think that was all of the questions in the chat.
So I'm
I
gonna
think.
say, we have
Yeah.
time, so are there any more questions about how, who, when, of the whole financial review process? Well, if you think of any, you can always
Oh,
put them in the
I have
chat. I
a
see your hand
question.
raised.
Do you
Go
mind if I just
ahead.
ask it?
Go
Because
ahead.
it's a little bit faster. It's kind of coming back to what Stacy said. Because I was looking at the qualifications, right? It said qualified accountant, such as CPA, who has been trained or licensed to conduct audits. But what if you are an accountant, but you're not a CPA? It doesn't matter. You should still have a board, like
Yeah,
a
so
committee.
yeah, this is Donna. Basically, if the person has the certificate as a CPA, then they don't need anybody to secondhand review it. They can submit it as reviewed and done and sign it. If they do not have that certification as CPA, then they do need another person to look at it and sign off that they've reviewed it as well. That second person doesn't need to do a full complete audit. They just need to review what the auditor has done to make sure that everything, it looks in order and is compliant.
And I'll jump in and say that this requirement that it needs to be a CPA or someone who's certified or trained and licensed and all that, that's coming from the insurance company. So, you know, that language, I just kind of pulled it, it's just kind of pulled from the insurance guidelines. So if you want, you could actually call the insurance company and say, here's our situation. We have someone, does this qualify or not? And then, but I would make sure and document that just in case, because you don't want
Yeah,
to have a situation where they say, oh, you didn't have a CPA and,
yeah.
right.
And
So,
don't forget, you have a lot of help on your teams within your units. Let's say you have, committee members that aren't on the financial team. They can help you out and review those audits as well. They don't need to be a financial person. So utilize the people that you have on your units. Okay, there's another question. Does the committee meet together to conduct the review, or like what Donna said, the financial reviewer completes and the second person reviews it? Normally you're not doing it together just because of time commitments and stuff. So usually the financial reviewer of the unit completes the review and then hands the books to a second person to review the audit and make sure that everything looks compliant. Normally, you're not doing it at the same time. I've not known anybody that did it at the same time. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing it at the same time, but it can be involved, and sometimes it's easier just to sit down and do it yourself. So nothing pertains that says you have to do it separate or together. It's up to you. Okay, Cheney has their hand up.
right. We'll have this be the last question and then we'll move on.
Okay, we'll move on. Cheney,
Yeah.
go ahead with your question.
Okay, I'm sorry, it's Shanae.
Janae, my
I know
apologies.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I do want to ask, so like once, because like right now we already have some expenses or whatever, who holds on to that book as these expenses are coming and we have these things already done? Like, who holds on to this book? Do I hold it? Does the president hold on to it? The
Mhm.
treasurer, like who holds this book?
Yeah, so usually the book is created by the treasurer and has, all the documents that are needed for running the units. And then that is what gets reviewed. Once the book is complete by the treasurer, then they hand it over to the reviewer to do the review. Once the review for that period is over, usually the PTAs have a storage area for storing these financial documents. So usually like I keep all my files in a binder, and then it's that binder for the 6-month period. And then once I'm done with it, I hand it to the president to put in the storage for the unit, as we have to store those financial documents. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Super.
I see there's more questions, Lisa, but I don't know, do we need to move on?
I think let's move on. And just to let people know, if we don't get to your questions during the time, we will be staying around afterwards to answer any additional questions after the official training period is over. So let's see, now we're going to show a video on the financial review checklist, which will be on presentation slides 9 through 10, so you can follow along. There are two main forms that the financial reviewer is going to use. PTAs often focus on the financial review report form, but it's the financial review checklist form that really is what gives you insight into the status of the financial records. So what we have here is the top portion of the financial checklist. And basically, this is everything that you're going to want the treasurer or the financial team to hand over to you that you will be reviewing. So as soon as you get the records from the treasurer, then go ahead and go through this list right away, even though maybe you won't have time to actually do the financial review right away. Just go ahead and go through the list to make sure you know exactly what you received from the treasurer. And then if there's any confusion about missing stuff, then you can get that taken care of right away. If there's stuff that there's missing, then you can get that from them soon, and so you can have it when you actually launch into reviewing everything. So ideally, if there is anything that's missing, consult with the treasurer or the recording secretary by way of email regarding anything that's missing. So that way you have sort of a trail of your communications and what you have and what you don't. So a couple things we want to look into. There are bylaws and standing rules in this list, and there are executive board minutes and association meeting minutes on here. So you may think about that and go, oh, those aren't really financial items. But the thing is, part of the financial review is to make sure that the financial transactions are following PTA policies and procedures, also following the rules of the association, and also what the board and the association have approved. So your bylaws and your standing rules, that's going to include stuff like how much the dues are. So if you're looking at somebody's financial records and you're seeing that they're collecting $12 per member, but the bylaws actually say they're only supposed to be collecting $10 per member, then that's an issue that needs to be addressed. So you wouldn't necessarily know that if you didn't have the bylaws. Also, the minutes are going to show you exactly what has been approved to be spent. So then you can, as you're going through the transactions and records, you can double check the minutes to make sure that, oh, this is an activity that the association approved, or this is a specific expense that the executive board approved. Okay. Then if we're going to the bottom of the form, so once you have all the records that the treasurer can turn over to you, then this is a list of what you're looking for in each set of records. So you're going to be looking through the cash verification forms, the treasurer's reports, the authorization forms. So you're just going to double check and make sure that each set of records kind of is following these certain guidelines. So this list is basically what you're looking for to make sure that things are conforming to PTA policy. So the order in which you review them just depends on you know, what feels easiest to you. Maybe it depends on how the records are organized. Maybe it just sort of depends on, okay, maybe you're gonna sort of target the easiest things first and then work your way, you know, around to make sure you get everything reviewed. In the handout, we do have samples of some of the forms, and then we'll talk about exactly what you're looking for in each particular form. But a lot of it is the financial data is the same, but completed in different formats. The one thing to keep in mind is that you as a financial reviewer, you're not going to be making any corrections to the documents or reports. You're just going to be observing and sort of pointing out what you see that may need improvement for the future. All righty. We sort of have this long going conversation here in the chat, going back to deadlines for example, this most recent period, July through December. And so do you want to talk about that, Donna?
Hi, yeah, sorry, team. So I've been trying to answer the questions in the chat. So the thing about the reviews is that ideally you want to finish your review. Let's say your books close at the end of June. You want to get it done in the fall time period. Ideally, you'd want to get it through that first association meeting. If you don't, pick it up on the next association meeting. What I've had happen before in my council area before is that a school got behind like a year or so, and then it really becomes kind of a nightmarish situation because then you've got all these reviews back to back. So ideally, to stay on track, once the book closes, if you can finish the review and have it for the next association meeting, you're on track. If you can't get it, try to pick it up on the next association meeting. At the district level, we like to see those reviews submitted within that 6-month period. As far as I don't know if Margaret has a specific deadline, but for the units and councils to stay on track, you want to make sure that you're doing reviews from the previous time, so you don't get too behind. Did that answer the question on timing?
And I was actually in the middle of typing that. If you're in a council, contact them because they have deadlines, like Donna was mentioning, that they should be turning that information over to us. So if you can coordinate with your council, or if you're out of council, then you can you would check with our deadlines directly.
Okay. All right, so that was a question about timing. Let me go back to the chat, Lisa, and see what the other questions are here. Let's see if you can finish.
I have a quick question, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
About that. So you were talking about like if a school is behind. So say that if your school is behind and you join after they were already behind, does that still fall on you as a responsibility to get that done?
Yeah, and that it becomes a problem when you have a financial reviewer and they maybe for whatever reason did not fulfill the role and the audits get behind, then it falls onto the next person. But you have help like within your council. I'm from Redondo Beach Council, and one of our units to get behind, and so I was able to assist them as the council financial reviewer. So you have help, but you want to make sure that at the unit level, that you're staying up to date the best you can. And what I find is, and Margaret can chime in, is that people get hung up on a question and then it never gets answered, and then time passes and then the problem gets worse. So the best thing to do is, if you have any question at all, whether it's from the treasurer or the reviewer, bubble those questions up through your counsel. We can answer them at the district as well. But do get your questions answered quickly, because when you get behind on these reviews, it can become time consuming. I had to really help one of the units in our council, and we were able to get them back up to speed, but it does take time.
Can I ask the question kind of related to that, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm the one who wrote about the taxes. So when I came in this year, they were like really behind on taxes. So I did the year before, so not last year, but the year before that year. So I had to get an extension for last year's taxes. So should I just do the taxes first before I do the audit? Because I noticed that it's asking for a lot of IRS forms.
So as a financial reviewer, you shouldn't be doing the taxes. That should be from the treasurer, or if you have, the financial reviewer role of the units in the council is to be more independent of what's happening, and they only come in after the books close. Lisa, do you want to respond?
Well,
So
I was
I
just
am-
going to say, don't hold up your processing of the financial review based on this other stuff. You can mark that as a finding so that people know, okay, we're behind on these filings. But don't hold up your actual reviewing of the records because these things are still undone.
Okay, and
Which I
I
think
am I am the treasurer, so I think that's why I'm trying to figure out like how to get the audit done.
Yeah,
But
you
so
can't
yeah, I
audit.
appreciate that. Yeah, I know I'm
Yeah.
not gonna audit, but I'm trying to
Okay.
see like who we have to get, what do I have to get ready. So that's kind of why I just want to make sure if I have to wait for taxes, but I think I understood to just get it done anyways, and then we'll get the taxes done.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Alrighty, let's move on to the next video, which is about some of the forms that are reviewed and the financial review report. And this is on slides 14 through 17. So we're going to share just a couple of the reports that you'll be looking at, just to give you some more detail as far as some of the stuff that you should be thinking about as you're reviewing the records. So here we have a treasurer's report that covers the month of November 2019. So what you want to make sure is that the treasurer's report covers any financial activity that happens during that period. So all the checks that were issued, any deposits that were made, any interest payments, any other stuff that might show up on the bank statement that affects your balance. And so you want to make sure that it's based on the activity that happens during that month, whether or not, for example, if you wrote a check in November and it doesn't clear during that month, you want to make sure that you still include it because that does affect your balance on hand. So also you want to make sure that the ending balance agrees with the checkbook register's balance at the end of that period. And another thing is you want to make sure that it's easy to match up the paperwork that you've been given with the items on the treasurer's report. Now here we have a bank reconciliation report. And so you want to be doing this every month. And just a few things to go over when you're doing your bank reconciliation and you're reviewing them is that all bank statements need to be opened or /printed if they're only available online, reviewed, signed, and dated monthly by a non-check signer. And then all the bank statements need to be reconciled by the treasurer and then reviewed, signed, and dated monthly by a non-check signer. So that way you know that the finances are being looked at and double-checked on a regular basis. You also want to make sure that any activity that shows up on the bank statement that you might not have existing paperwork for, like mentioned, interest payments, maybe totem payments, those are not going to show up on the paperwork that you prepare for checks or the cash verification forms. So make sure that that is accounted for in your bank reconciliation report, in your treasurer's report, and also in your checkbook register. Here we have a sample ledger, and what this report does is it breaks down the information, your income and your disbursements, into different categories, and it makes it easier to track things. So the one thing that I wanted to point out is that we have our membership dues that come in, and that is broken down into the dues, the portion of the dues that stays with the unit, and then the portion of the dues that is actually forwarded on up to council. So as you're getting in memberships and membership dues, make sure that you're accounting for them by splitting them up into the portion that you keep and then the portion that's forwarded, because eventually you'll want to make sure that this portion ends up on your expense side as being a check issued to your council. Also, this can help you keep track of how much you're making in fundraisers, how much you're spending on programs, and if it's split up correctly, then it will help you do your annual financial report and your tax filings. So here's the other main form besides the financial review checklist, the financial review report. So in this top section, you're going to put just sort of the general information about your unit and your bank. One thing you might want to note is that there's a field called account name. We used to have account number on there, but in the interests of not publicizing the unit's account numbers, we've just changed it to account name. So if it's a checking account, you would put that. If you have savings, PayPal account, that's the kind of information you would put right there. Another thing to look at is here's where you're going to want your total members for the year to date. And then this total members number is going to also include this amount here, which is your e-members through Totem. So then down here is basically where you're going to reconcile your activity between your financial records, your treasurer's reports, and the bank statement. So here you're going to put the period that the review covers. There's the check numbers that are covered. Here will be the balance on hand as of the day prior to the period that you're starting to review. And then here would be the total receipts for this entire period and the total disbursements for the entire period. And then you should end up with your balance on hand as of the last day of the period. So in this section, you're going to be reconciling your bank statement balance to your balance on hand. So this number here will be the ending bank statement balance as of the last statement of the period. Here you're going to put any deposits that you made during the period that did not show up on your bank statement. This should actually be a very rare occurrence. Then here would be any checks that you issued that had not cleared as of that ending bank statement. And then with these adjustments made, then you should come up with an amount, and this amount should match up with this amount here. Okay. So here is where you as the financial reviewer are going to decide sort of the overall state of the financial records. So was everything, in order, really good, no missing forms or signatures, then you can mark that as correct with no recommendations. If everything pretty much seemed fine, but there were a few missing things, then you might want to go ahead and mark the correct with the attached recommendations. If you still had sort of it was overall correct, but there was more of a pattern of missing things, then you might go ahead and check this substantially correct. And then if things are worse, if things are missing, if there is information where it's getting really hard to actually make an assessment of the status of the financial records, you may end up checking one of these. Okay, so down at the bottom is where you're going to say when the financial reviewer completed the process. If you ended up needing a committee, you would put the date that they review it here. Here's the date where you present it to the executive board and the executive board adopts it. And then here's the date where you would have presented it to the association and the association adopted it. Here's the financial reviewer's name and signature. And then also right here, this is important to mark because this way you know whether a committee is required or not. If the financial reviewer is not a qualified accountant, mark that, and then you'll have your signatures of your committee down here. If you're lucky enough to have a qualified accountant as your financial reviewer, then there's nothing required down here. All righty, are there any questions?
I don't see any questions in the chat.
Okay, all righty. Well, actually, there's one that Margaret answered.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The question was, should you have a separate financial review report for the checking and the savings accounts? And the answer is yes, for every account, including PayPal.
Hi, I have a question. Just it's a follow-up question, but it was something that you mentioned where it said like all bank statements need to be open and reviewed by a non-check signer. Did I get that right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Would that normally be like the recording secretary or just someone who's not a check signer?
It could be. It could actually be your financial reviewer because they're not a check signer. And they would actually, that might be, and Donna can correct me if I'm wrong, but that might actually be ideal since that person is going to need some familiarity with the numbers anyway. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to share a little interactive. What's wrong with this financial review? And so if you see stuff, you can go ahead and put it in the chat. I'm just going to ask right now, is this too small for people to see everything? Because then we can go a section at a time. Or can people see it well enough to make comments about it? Okay, if no one's complaining, I'm just going to leave it as is, but let me know if you want me to change it. Oh, please zoom in. Okay, I will. Hold on. All righty. Yes, we caught that there are e-members are more than total members when really the total members does include the e-members. So this is sort of a mathematical impossibility. So yes, that's correct. Good catch. There are a couple more in this very top section. Oh, in this very top section above the dark line that are a little sneaky. So I'm just gonna go ahead and point this out, that we have here the name of the unit, the name of the council, we just chose Long Beach, and then, yes, right, it says District Long Beach, but this is not like your school district, it is your PTA district, which, so this should actually say 33, because you're part of 33rd District. And the other sneaky one that no one ever gets is that there is a digit missing from here, that it should be a 9-digit number. And so just make sure that when you're doing your reports, like don't just copy it from the previous report. Make sure you can check in your bylaws to make sure that you have the correct number in there. Okay. So I think that's it for that chunk. And now I'm going to go to this section here. So I'm going to say there's no math errors here. So don't be whipping out your calculators, but just look for some other stuff that might be an issue. Ah, very good. The reconciled balance here and here, these two numbers should match, and they don't. So there's something that needs to be fixed. Okay. And there's a question in the chat.
Okay, yeah, the question is, it's supposed to be monthly versus biannual.
Because this does cover July 1st through December 31st.
Yeah.
So you might need to clarify.
Yeah, can you
Yeah.
clarify your question, Stacy? I guess we're not understanding.
Either I thought we were covering monthly reports, but this is also for the biannual report.
Yeah, the financial, okay, so this report that you're looking at is the financial review top page. And it is done on a biannual basis.
Only, okay. I had it
Yes.
written down as monthly. Good to know.
Mhm,
Thank you.
Yeah, the period of reviews are January 1 through June 30. And then like this one showing July 1st to December 31st.
Yeah, let me jump in a little bit. It's like the normal regular cycle is semi-annual. I mean, so every 6 months. But in the event that there's a resignation of the check signer, for example, a treasurer, a president, or EVP, whoever the check signer leave, then that's the time you need to conduct another separate financial review,
And
which is
okay.
off cycles.
And then I think that, I don't know if you're thinking about, the slides that we were showing monthly reports, like a monthly treasurer's report and a monthly ledger. So the financial reviews are generally done like twice a year. And yes, it's based on those monthly reports, but you're going to be reviewing those monthly reports that all fall within that period, that, for instance, July 1st through December 31st. Tommy caught my thought, the one that I thought was sneaky, that there's this uncleared check 1262, but the range here only goes up to 1261. So something
Yeah.
is wrong there.
Yeah, let me clarify on that one, Lisa, too, because someone had put in the chat in regards to check number 1221. And
Right.
if a check doesn't clear from the prior time, it's okay to keep it. Actually, you should continue to keep it as an uncleared check. So even though the check numbers included in the review are 1222 to 1261, if 1221 never cleared, you want to include that, but 1265 is outside of the window. And Margaret, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Donna. So for the one that is not clear, you do want to put it there, including in the report. But you also want to write it on your finding to ask the treasurer to go back to void the check to see what's happening. Because if it's over 6 months old, you want to make sure that, whether the check was lost, was damaged, whatever reason, that what is that is still staying there after the 6 months period. So it's good that you have it included, even though we think it's outside the range, the time range, but you still want to put it on your finding to ask the treasurer to go back to see what's going on with that check that haven't been cashed.
And moving to the next section here. And so Anna's got a follow-up in the chat about. And in the meantime, everyone else can look and see what they find in this bottom section. That's right. And I noticed that nothing was checked off for the recommendations, which is kind of basically the whole point of doing this. Okay, and someone caught that the date adopted by the board was earlier than the date that it was completed. And then also that like all those dates just are out of order and don't make sense. Yes. But to go back to Anna's question, I think you're asking whether it's okay to include 1221 in the check numbers included in this review section. And I would say no, that you just want to include the checks that were actually issued during that review period, even though there's that one outstanding one from before. And then you just make a note of it in your findings. Okay, are we finding anything else that's missing? No signatures. Thank you, Tommy. Also, in the interest of, yes, exactly. In the interest of time, I'm just going to jump in and say neither of these boxes is checked. So we don't know whether the reviewer is a qualified accountant or not. And so we don't know whether there's need for a review committee to be signing off on it. But in any case, the financial reviewer should be signing off on it. And that, I believe, is it. Let's move on to the next video just to make sure that we cover all the material, but we will get to the question about the financial review committee. So Rita, can you do the slide about findings and recommendations, which is slides 21 and 22. Once the financial reviewer is done going through the checklist and filling out the report form, if there are items that you marked no on when you're going through the checklist, maybe missing items or forms that do not conform to PTA policy, you're going to want to make sure you make a list of findings and recommendations. This would be a separate sheet of paper. And so you're just making these findings and recommendations very objectively, just based on the paperwork and records that were submitted to you. So you want to make sure that your tone is not judgmental or personal. And so one example might be if there's a finding that, oh, check number 105 in the amount of $65 dated October 13th, 2019 was not supported by receipts. And then you would follow that up with a recommendation that basically just reminds people about what the policy is, that all check authorization forms must include documentation such as receipts or invoices which supports the amount of the check requested. So there's nothing personal about that. It's all based on, oh, I was going through the paperwork and this is what I noticed and this is my recommendation. So then you want to make sure that, again, you keep it objective, that you don't let any opinions about people, whatever, enter into how you write up your report. Once the financial reviewer is done with the checklist, the report, and writing up the findings and any recommendations, then they can go ahead and present everything to the president and the financial team for discussion and just kind of give them a heads up to let them know what's going to be presented at the next board meeting. So then everything, the report and the findings and recommendation report would be presented to the executive board for adoption. And then once that happens, then the financial review report only is presented to the association for adoption. Once all that has gone through, then you can go ahead and submit it to the next level of PTA. So if you're in a unit, then you could go ahead and submit it to your council. If the financial reviewer is not available to present the financial review at either of those meetings, then a member of the review committee can do so. Financial officers, such as the treasurer or the financial secretary, should not present the financial review to the board or the association because that is a conflict of interest to be presenting a report on that covers their own work. All righty. So shall we start by making sure that we discuss the financial review committee out loud so it's included in the recording? So Donna, the question was how many people need to be involved for a financial review committee? Can the secretary, who's not a check signer, be in it?
Yeah, okay, yes, secretary can be a reviewer because they're not a check signer.
That was me who asked the question. I think it's because it was for last year. So my question is, this is for last year's treasurer stuff. The treasurer last year, but I'm the treasurer now. Can I be a part of that committee or no?
So you should never review your own book. So if
Okay.
you were the treasurer and now you're the reviewer, that's a bad situation.
Well, no. I wasn't part of the PTA last year. I am
Oh.
this.
Okay,
So I'm just a
that
treasurer.
should be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that should be fine. You need a minimum of 2 people to review.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
yeah,
And just to clarify, that minimum of 2 people can include the financial reviewer.
yes, that's right. So the financial reviewer does the review, and then one additional person, if that reviewer is not a CPA certified, then they need one additional person to review. And they don't need to do that full audit, like I said before. They just need to be checking the audit or the
Right.
reviewers' work and make sure everything looks in good order.
Thank you.
And then there's another question here about
About the data governance?
yeah.
Yeah. The question is there any data governance around emailing this report? Is it okay to email via PTA designated email? So in regards to the data and the financial review, there is no restriction in regards to emailing this information. It could be in your personal email.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you want to, Stacy, if you want to explain what kind of concerns there might be, because I don't know if we're missing part of your question or not.
No, just there's been so much emphasis around AI and hacking and cybersecurity lately. I didn't know if some of the information, I don't know, the EIN number or check numbers or any of that sort of data is there's restrictions around encrypting it or anything like that. If not, I'm sure the association and committees have scrutinized that.
Yeah.
So, just asking.
Let me comment on that. You know, it's a really good question, and there's nothing that stops you from doing that. If you think it's good practice, you can do that. What we're sharing in this training, there has been no formal flow down from CAPTA that anything needs to be encrypted or anything. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you.
So Donna, are you able to open the findings poll? Go ahead and launch it, and then I'm just gonna remind everybody that the report findings should be written in a positive but firm manner. It should be based on the documentation submitted to the financial reviewer and should reflect the independence of the financial reviewer. A firmer tone may be taken for repeat findings. Okay, so of this list, and you may need to scroll down because it's kind of got several items on the list. Just mark off which ones you think are appropriately written in that objective tone.
Okay, so the question on the poll, which of these findings are appropriately written? Multiple selections are allowed.
We'll give it about another, I don't know, 30 to 60 seconds, just because there's a lot of stuff to read.
Everybody has about 20 more seconds. Okay, now we're going to end the poll. Okay, shall I share the results?
Yes, please. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and review these. So this first one, the July 2023 Treasurer's Report was not prepared. And this one is pretty tricky because it sounds objective, but really all the financial reviewer knows is that that treasurer's report was not included in the paperwork that they got. So it would be more appropriate to say that the report was not submitted. Okay, cash verification form dated 9/8/2023, blah, 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 was not signed by a second counter. Yes, this is appropriately worded. Good job, people. Amy said the receipts for check number 2034 dated October 10, 2023 in the amount of $325 were in the bungalow. Actually, because this wording is not based on what was submitted, right? Basically, you're just looking at whatever paperwork was turned into you, and you're making your findings based on that, and not on someone said this, someone told me this. So this is actually not an appropriate worded finding. And so you could say something like, the receipts for blah, blah, blah were not submitted. Okay. The unit collected $10 for membership dues when the bylaws state that the approved membership dues are $8. Yes, this is appropriately worded. The August 2023 bank reconciliation was not signed. I told them before that this requirement needed to be implemented and it was not done. that's the tone on that is a little inappropriate. So instead of that second sentence, which is like, I told them before, you can just say that something along the lines of, this is a repeat finding. Okay, and the association minutes do not report the release of funds for the carnival. And yes, that's an appropriately worded finding. And can we stop sharing that, Donna?
Yeah, okay.
All righty. Are there any questions about that actually? Before we move on.
Ask Chat GPT
I
the recommendation with no bad tone. Well, just keep it to the facts. You know what I mean? Just the thing is, you're reviewing the books. You're just wanting to make sure everything looks right. So just keep it to the facts. And if something doesn't look right, write it down as a finding. And we can usually people get this positive feedback. When you make it positive, then the book improves the next time, right? So that feedback gets back to the treasurer or the committee on making the book even better. Are
And
there other questions about that?
I'm just going to say, yes, the more objective you can make your tone, then the less that you as a financial reviewer can be accused of playing favorites or, just reacting based on personalities or whatever, right? So if you're the objective set of eyes, then it makes you and the whole financial review process less scary for the people whose books you're reviewing. Okay, why don't we go to the other poll, the red flags poll?
Okay. Red flags, everyone. The question on this poll is, which of the following are red flags? So there's multiple selections are allowed. So we'll give you about 60 seconds for this one.
Yeah. Don't overthink it. This is anonymous. We're not going to come down on you for answering right or wrong or anything.
Fifteen more seconds, guys. Okay, we'll go ahead and end this one now.
Okay, yes.
All righty. And let me
Got it.
share the results. There you go.
All righty. So the first one, there's no documentation of fundraiser income and expenses. Already, like no documentation is just like sending shivers down my spine. Net proceeds are considerably less than expected. Yes, this is a red flag. Online bank statements are requested. Bank statements are not mailed by the bank to the unit. And this is actually not a red flag because sometimes banks don't even, these days, give the option of sending a hard copy. Maybe in the past when online bank statements were a new thing, it might have been a concern, but now there's no way to get around it. So there you have it. So, right, this number 2 is not a red flag. Treasurer's reports are delivered orally to the board and association with a hard copy to follow. This one is actually a red flag because you need to be, the people who you're presenting it to need to be able to follow along. And so if you're just reading out the report, just sort of spewing out a bunch of numbers, even if you're reading out the detail, that's going to be really hard for people to understand and retain and ask any questions that they may have. So this one would be a red flag. check requests do not have the signatures of the president and recording secretary. This is actually a red flag because that form does require both the signature of the president and the recording secretary. And a lot of you got that right, so good job. Bank statements are not reviewed and initialed by a non-check signer. Red flag, definitely. Want to make sure that the bank statements seem fine, that they don't seem like they're altered or anything. So we want to make sure that there's an extra set of eyes looking at them in a timely fashion. And a separate review is not performed for a PayPal account. That's also a red flag because a review needs to be done for every account, not just bank accounts, bank checking, bank savings, but also anything that you have money flowing through, like a PayPal account, a Square account. So are there any questions about that? Because maybe some of this information was not as explicit as the other poll. Are there any other questions in general? That's the material we have, plus there are additional pages in the slide deck that you can review. I see a hand up, Shanae. Go ahead.
So I asked earlier, I am responsible for the book that was due before I joined.
Yeah, I can answer the question. So the financial reviews are kind of linked from one to the next. You cannot do one until the prior one is finished. So that's why it's important to keep up with the reviews. So this is the thing. The person that was before you is supposed to be doing the review. Either they are doing it or somebody else is doing it, but you can't do your review until that review is finished. So I would go to your counsel for support and help. You have a financial reviewer within your counsel, and they can give you some guidance. Perhaps they are assisting with that prior review. I don't know the details. But you cannot do your review until the prior one is done.
I see Kelly with her hand up.
Yes, hi. I have a question about doing separate reviews for each account. So we have a regular checking, and then we have an account that the Member Planet and Square feed into. So when you're saying we need two separate ones, it's just for those two separate accounts, or are we supposed to be doing something with actual Square separately and with actual Member Planet separately? Does that make sense? Are you talking about we have to do separate just for the bank accounts, or we have to like run reports off of Square and Member Planet and have them review that as well?
Are they both, I mean, they automatically feed into your, see, I've never worked with Square before. So
Yes.
like any Square transactions,
Yep.
that credit actually like automatically goes to that?
Yeah, it goes
Bank
it automatically, Member Planet and Square, the deposits go into a special bank account that we have. So we have a separate bank account where those deposits feed in.
Okay.
So I'm assuming we have to do a financial review on our regular checking and then what we call our Member Planet bank account, which is also, it houses
Right.
Square as well. Because like I said, I wouldn't even know
Yeah.
where to begin to go on to Member Planet and Square and run reports for an audit because they're not user friendly.
Right, right.
Yeah, no, I think you're good running the, doing the reviews on your checking account and the
Okay.
other account that you have. The other things that, you know, we do reviews on is like a PayPal account.
Yeah, we don't have that.
Yeah. And so that PayPal account actually sort of the money sits there in PayPal until
Right.
we request to draw it down and get it dumped into our e-commerce account that we use. So I guess it
Okay.
is a little different from Square. Thank you.
That makes me feel a lot better. I was a little worried about having to figure out reports for those because, like I said, they are not user friendly.
Okay,
I
good to
have a
know. I'm
question.
not.
Thank you.
I have a question. How you just mentioned that. So we have like a PayPal account that just the money sits there, and then we request it to go into the online bank account, which is what we call it. So we need 3 auto reports then, that little PayPal, the online, and the checking?
Yes,
Oh, okay. Even though there's like no checks or anything that come out of that one?
yes. It should be very simple for you to do a review of the PayPal.
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Are there any more questions
Right.
besides what might be done after we're
Banking.
wrapped up here? Okay, well, I'm going to say we're at the end of our time today. Thank you for joining us, and we hope this has been helpful. For more information about PTA finances, please contact your council's financial officers or visit our website, or which is 33rdpta.org, or California State PTA's website, which is capta.org. For recordings of previous trainings, financial and otherwise, visit our YouTube channel, and we'll drop the link in the chat in just a bit. And also our contact information is on page 2 of the handout. So thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day. And I am typing the YouTube channel here. Oops. And I'm
Yeah.
happy. On both
And,
of
you know,
YouTube.
while we wrap, Lisa, I just want to tell everybody, you know, thank you so much for your support for our kids, supporting the PTA. These jobs I know are sometimes not easy. And if you do have a question, please don't hesitate to bubble those up to your council, because we're all here to help you be successful as units, as we support for our children. So I want to thank you all on behalf of the Finance Committee and Margaret and everyone. Thank you so much for participating in this training today, and please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you.